Hi, welcome to the Pursuit of Truth. I was just watching Sky News and they've got question time, and it was just interesting how a question was put by a member of the SNP. I must admit, I do see that Scottish people have a lot better, fairness and equality in their nature than English people. I mean, I know that's a generalisation, and I don't believe in division, so I shouldn't really be saying that, because that's the problem, isn't it? When you divide English and Scottish, then you can say things like that. So I guess I'm falling into the same trap that I'm always talking about. But it's just I have noticed on YouTube and on this particular interesting thing you're going to hear, how they try to find fairness, and it may be because of the way they've been treated through history, through the English rule that Scotland has had to put up with. But obviously, as again, I have to remember that I don't believe in division of land, but in the system that we're in, yes, that's what I'm trying to say. But yeah, I want you to listen to this. It's interesting because what it shows is that their question is asked, and they're legitimate questions, and the way that the Conservative MP, he's a foreign, not foreign office minister, is he? I'm not sure exactly. He's North Africa and something minister. I don't know his name. And he just, well, he doesn't answer all the question. Obviously, he misses a big question, which of course I didn't even think about. But the part that he doesn't, I will play it to you in a minute. What he does is he deflects from it and then attacks the person. I noticed Boris Johnson does this a lot, and I've not noticed other prime ministers do that, but they like to attack the person's question and their character. I know this is like ad hominem, and this is a well-known trick, and they hope that the audience listening will then feel that and then ignore what they've heard. But the fact is, he's showing that there's issues being raised. It's to do with Israel and Palestine. He's talking about the war crimes that have been noticed against Israel. And another journalist I heard yesterday was talking about these things where they were using water cannons on people that weren't even causing any trouble, and they're young people just in the area, which is against international law. We all know the international law that Israel has been breaking for the last 46 years with the occupation of parts of Gaza. Everyone knows about that. No one ever does anything about that. Not the UN, not America, no one. But I don't want to sound like I'm falling on either side. Obviously, if I think that the thing is, I don't believe in the occupation of land. I don't believe in dividing land up anymore. But if you look at it from the system, the way that we look, it does look very unfair. The way that Israel gets away with breaking international law for 46 years, and yet you want people to see them in a good light. I'm talking about the country. I'm not talking about Jewish people. That's a completely different thing. That's the Israeli government. It's the same as the British government. There's a lot of corrupt people, a lot of, I'm not saying that the British government is any better. All governments around the world are capable of these same kinds of things. That doesn't mean that the people are the same. So I just want to make that clear, just in case anyone wants to try and make out that I'm being anti-Semitic or anything like that. I'm not. I'm not trying to say that. What I'm trying to say, well, actually, I'm showing that British people and Scottish people are differing in how that countries, if you're a friend with a country, how you get special treatment. Israel is very friendly with the United Kingdom and America, whereas the Middle East isn't. And same with Russia and China. If the same thing was happening in Russia and China, it'd be a completely different story. So we all know that. We all can see that, surely. It's like a best friend at school. It's the same thing. But let me play this clip so you can hear what I mean.
We now go to SNP spokesperson Chris Law. Chris. Mr. Speaker, we are witnessing the second week of horrific violence in Israel and Palestine.
It's reported that 10 have been killed by Hamas and over 200 have been killed by Israelis' airstrikes, including 65 children. The SNP abhors all indiscriminate violence against civilians. So firstly, what further steps can the UK government take in demanding an immediate ceasefire? Mr. Speaker, I'm incredibly proud that last month my city of Dundee voted to recognise Palestine as a nation state. So secondly, will the UK government today commit to recognising Palestine as an equal and independent nation state? The UN Secretary General has accused the Israeli government of acting contrary to their obligations under human rights law. Indeed, Amnesty International have highlighted potential war crimes by both Israel and Hamas. So thirdly, what pressures is the UK government bringing to investigate these shocking breaches? Lastly, Mr. Speaker, UK arms export licences to Israel have increased by over 1,000% in the last 2 years. This is not neutrality. Therefore, finally, will the UK government immediately suspend these exports until they are thoroughly examined?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I would urge the honourable gentleman, for whom I have a huge amount of respect, not to equate the legitimate government of Israel with a terrorist organisation, the military wing of Hamas. As I have said at the dispatch box a number of times, Israel has a right to self-defence, but we've also made it clear that we expect at all times for them to do so in accordance with international humanitarian law and make every effort to minimise civilian casualties. But ultimately, the best way of minimising civilian casualties is to bring this conflict to a conclusion. That is why we are working both with Palestinian leadership, the government of Israel, and our international partners, both in the region and further afield, to bring a timely end to this conflict, work towards a more permanent ceasefire, and ultimately to a peaceful two-state solution.
His name is James Cleverly, by the way. So you see how he dodges the important question about finance. Because this is often the way. We often will talk about how bad things are happening. Oh dear, these children being killed. And yet you find out that UK government is supplying weapons of mass destruction. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they're supplying it to both sides. Same as like in Iraq, it was the US that was supplying them with weapons, and then when they were fighting them in the Iraq War, they were fighting with weapons that they'd sold to them when they were on their side and fighting against Iran. This and why does he not care? He doesn't care about the civilian casualties. He doesn't care about. I mean, even take away civilian casualties, and what about the soldiers and the terrorists? They're human beings at the end of the day, both of them, whatever side you're going to come down on. But why are we selling weapons to anyone? But he just dodged that question because he doesn't want the blood on his hand that he, and when he's talking about two-state solution they've been talking about forever, it's never going to happen if you don't recognise the other country, is it? He dodged that question as well. And of course he defended Israel's right to, I suppose every human being under God has the right to defend themselves. And under law, I believe everyone has the right to defend themselves. But that doesn't mean they have the right to break those laws. And we know, the minister was saying that both Israel and Hamas, Amnesty International, has said that they've broken international law, international rules of combat, or whatever rules they were talking about. So he said it to both of them. He wasn't trying to equate them together. That was just a clever way to rubbish his question. And of course all the people went, ooh, because they're always going to be on the side of their friends. If it was America versus Russia, of course they'd be on the side of America and they'd be booing at Russia. I mean, it's like a pantomime, really. But the thing is that if one side is, if even both sides are committing these crimes, then surely the UK government would be interested in knowing that. But like the journalist was saying, that a lot of time they will ask Israel about these things, and they say they're going to do an investigation and they never get any results. I'm sure, they don't even bother to do, like what we do here is we just write a report by someone who's pretending to be independent and is whitewash. So I'm not trying to say there's anything better, but what I'm trying to say is that they are coming down on one side, and obviously it's going to be the government side, the same as in South Africa when the Conservative government under Margaret Thatcher came on the side of the South African government as opposed to the ANC. The ANC that they labelled as terrorist. But look how history has rewritten, look how history has come about. Now, Nelson Mandela and the ANC were freedom fighters, and those in the South African government were oppressive. But it's not that it's changed, that was always the way. It's just that we were on the wrong side back then. So I think, and obviously it's because they're always going to be on the side of government, because government means democracy and terrorists means radical thinking, and that's what scares them so much. That idea of people not falling into line, people not baying like sheep. But obviously you expect Hamas to be breaking international law and combats and whatever, because they're a terrorist organisation, and they, that's by nature, obviously it's going to be, because they're just normal citizens. But the government of a country, you don't expect them to be breaking international law. That should be very worrying for you. If you heard that United Kingdom was breaking international law, the US was, like we can talk about Guantanamo Bay. But did George Bush or Tony Blair ever face any crimes at The Hague? Of course not. But Slobodan Milosevic does, because he's not of America or the UK. It's very selective how the white individual rich people and of people of the United Kingdom and the US and certain European countries will have immunity, almost as if a birthright. This world, I know the world that we live in isn't fair and isn't equal. But it just how it just amazes me how someone can stand up there and say things like that when they know that the questioner wasn't equating Hamas with Israel. He was just pointing out that Amnesty International had said both of them had committed crimes, and that he wanted the UK government to cease giving weapons to Israel, because they don't give, I assume, Israel weapons to Hamas, so he can't say that, because he wants this to be investigated first. Because if you know someone is committing a crime, and Amnesty International, I assume, is something that the UK government would recognise, I suspect they're founding members of it. So why do they still want to carry on selling weapons? Why? Why, of course. Money. Money and influence. Money because they make a lot out of it, and influence because then they keep on the good side of all these people that they're selling weapons to. I don't know, it's just, I sometimes think I waste my time trying to sort of show these things well, it's not really, but we all know it's just another example. That's why I do it, just so you can have another example of the fact of how human beings can defend the most undefendable things, can say the most extreme things. And that's why, when you see this kind of mentality, when people, when I was watching films about the abolition of slaves, how, I can't remember his name now, how he would go, I can't remember even the film name, but he would go to try and change that law in the government, the UK government, and they would all boo at him, and it took him years to get it changed. Something that you could think that surely they would understand what's right and what's wrong. But obviously human beings don't. I don't understand, or maybe he does know what's right and what's wrong, but it's to do with money and to do with keeping the status quo, keeping those that are friends together. I don't know what explains it. Anyway, that's enough. Take care, take it easy. God bless and peace.